Welcome everyone to Coffee with a Codex. I'm Dot Porter. I am a curator in the Kislak Center for Special Collections, Rare Books and Manuscripts in the University of Pennsylvania Libraries. And Coffee with a Codex, if you have been here before, welcome back. If this is your first time, I'm really glad you're here. It's kind of like our book show and tell. So every week, I spend about 30 minutes showing and talking about one or sometimes a few books from our collection. It is focused on manuscripts. So we are going to, hold on a second, I have to, all right. There we go. Sorry about that. So every week we bring out a book and we show them off. This week is a little bit special because this was actually something that was requested of me. And I got an email because every week I ask if there are particular things that people want to see. And I got an email from one of my colleagues over in, I think, the biomedical library, who said that we, that is they over there, had on the walls of the new space over there, they actually took images from this book that we're going to look at. And she was like, do you think we could look at this book? And I found out a little more about it. And I said, well, that's a printed book. We don't really look at printed books. We really focus on manuscripts, which are handwritten books. And so what I decided to do is that I would find a way that we could include it. And so what I've done is I have the printed book here, and we are going to look at that. But it turns out that the text that's in this book is a really well-known medical text, an anatomy treatise. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that and who wrote it. But it was so well known that it was translated into other languages. And the other manuscript that we're going to be looking at is a translation, not actually of this exact text. It is a translation of a shorter version that the author himself made shorter. And so when we take a look at both of them, you'll see. So let's go ahead and come over here and start taking a look at this while I tell you a little bit about this text. So it is an anatomy text. So of course, anatomy is the study of the human body. And it was written by Andreas Vesalius in the 1500s. Let me see if I can find when he wrote it. The treatise was published for the first time in 1543 in Basel. And it's got some really incredible illustrations here. So let me see. All right. And it's very large. So we're going to see how much of this we can get in the screen. So here we have the opening. We've got this great title page with woodcuts. And now get used to seeing woodcuts because there are a lot of woodcuts in here. And you can see even on this first page, the title page, we have the title of the book, we have the author's name. And this is an illustration of a dissection, of a human dissection. So here, get ready because you're going to be seeing a lot of the insides of people's bodies. So here, if I can get this right, here we go. So here we have the corpse that is being dissected, and we've got I believe that this is the author, Andreas, here, and he is showing everyone here the dissection of this body. Interestingly, the body has breasts, so this is a female, and it is indeed, interestingly, I was reading about this earlier, so I feel the need to tell you this. I am a curator in special collections. I know about books. I am not a medical practitioner or a historian of science. I do not know. But my understanding was that one of the earliest human dissections that we know about which happened actually, not that I mean, obviously it happened in the classical period. So now let's talk a little bit about the history of dissection. Dissection was a thing in the sort of ancient and classical times. With the rise of Christianity, there was this belief that no, you should not do things like this to the human body, because the human body had to be able to come back. When Christ returns, all of the bodies will rise. And so you can't go cutting people up. However, later in the Middle Ages, in the sort of 13th century, you had, especially in Italy, more and more interest in the study of anatomy and the study of the side of science. And so I can't remember which pope it was, but there was a pope in the sort of late 13th century who said, all right, we can do this. And he gave permission. And there was a well-known teacher at that time who did this sort of first recorded with permission dissection, and it was believed to be a woman. So I think that that's why this this corpse is a woman. And then we have this person who looks an awful lot like the author who appears. Maybe I saw him on a website, but I saw him up. No, here he is. So if that looks familiar, it's because it's that same person from the large there, and there's that. And so here we have the start of this text. So the way that the book is organized is it's in 6 chapters. So we have 6 chapters, and the chapters are on bones and cartilage. We have bones and cartilage. We have ligaments and muscles, the digestive system, on the heart, on the brain, and then 6 on the reproductive system. And it's illustrated. So the first book, which is on the bones and cartilage, there's a lot of text. Of course, it's divided into, each book is divided into chapters. There are notes, little notes in the margin. Let's see if I can get this so we can see a little bit more. There we go. Notes in the margin, but there are also these woodcut illustrations throughout. And Andreas, he participated in a lot of human dissections. And so this, even though my understanding is that even though there were people who were doing dissections earlier, even sort of in the later Middle Ages and into this period, that he was the first person to sort of write it down as something new, as sort of new knowledge. So up to this point, people writing about anatomy were still looking back at people like Galen, who were writing medical treatises, much earlier. And this was the knowledge that sort of was taken through the Middle Ages. And so now we're hitting the Renaissance when there's a lot of new knowledge coming out, including this. And so the woodcuts are taken from, I think we can assume, his own personal experiences. So he, and especially, these are little bits, but when we get to the end of the book, we'll see, so here's more bones, and here's sort of the feet and how the bones fit together, and here's the bones taken apart. You can see them there, but come on, where are you? Here we go. Then at the end, we have sort of full body illustrations. And it starts with the skeleton, but as we go through the book to each new chapter, there's going to be more and more sort of building up on the skeletons too. And I love the way they're sort of posed, it's like there's actually a skeleton standing here. And I don't know enough about the history of how these diagrams were made, but I could see an artist sort of setting up a skeleton like this and posing it and then sort of drawing it, or I guess inscribing it from from that. So I see that there are a little bit of stuff in the chat. Let's see. For those not viewing in speaker view, oh, sorry, I thought I had pinned that for everybody. Let me double check. No, it's supposed to be spotlight. Okay. All right. Michelle points out that Pennsylvania Hospital Library also has a copy. Yes. Let alone, yeah. Let's see. Kislak has the 2014 Karger annotated translation. Oh, I didn't see that there was a translation. I should have noticed that, but because that would have been helpful. But we don't really have time. We don't really have time to look at too many of the words. So this is his original. This is the original text. This is his text that that Andreas Vesalius wrote. And after he published it for the first time in 1543, in the same year, he also published a shorter version of this book, which was, as it says in this description that we got from Les Luminaires, I think when we purchased our manuscript, it was less bulky and less expensive, with a slightly different title. So the full text title is De Humani Corporis Fabrica Libri Septem. That's the 7 books on the structure of the human body. And the smaller version is De Humani Corporis Fabrica Librorum Epitome, an abridgment of the structure of the human body. And that's what this one is. So when I first looked at these, I was like, why is this one so small and the other one is so big? And it's like, well, because it's not actually exactly the same text. So this is a translation of what I'm going to call the epitome, which is a shorter version. And this is handwritten, and it is in, and it's written in Yiddish. So we're turning it, so we're starting here, and here we have the title page, very different kind of title page from the printed copy. And then we go in, and the structure is the same. So this has the same six chapters, and it even has, if we zoom in a little bit, we can see that on this page there's even Latin notations in the margin to sort of say that here is, we're talking about cartilage here, because remember the first chapter is about the bones of the cartilage. So that's where we are here. These are the only Latin words that appear in the book. If you look, there's a couple in the margin. There's also fibra, there's a little space, and the Latin word has been written here. The description that we got from the bookseller says that it's the same scribe, and I have no reason to question that. It would actually make a lot of sense for the same scribe to be putting both the Latin, writing the main text and also putting the Latin in. So what does this tell us? It tells us that the interest in this text went well beyond the sort of only the Latin speaking West, that you also had Jewish doctors who were interested in learning about anatomy from this text, and were willing to, copy it out themselves. And so that is the first chapter, and here's where the second chapter starts. So we can see how much shorter that is. So this is the first book in the printed text, the large printed text. And here is the first book in the epitome. Sorry? Oh, sorry, was that a question? Okay. If you have questions, don't hesitate to put them in the chat. I'll be checking the chat. So it's much shorter, and of course the illustrations are not part of this book either. So we have the first book, and then the second book starts here. And there is no more Latin that's been written in. So, and I'll zoom in a little bit here. So most of this is in, I mean, it's all in Yiddish, in an Ashkenazi script. And let me see, I didn't tell you when this was written. I believe it was at the end of right at the end of the 1500s is when we believe that this book was copied. And in fact, I'm taking another look at the description. It looks like this was actually based on a pirated German translation published in Nuremberg in 1551. And again, like this is something that happened a lot with texts through this period, where you have a big text or a long text that's been shortened, and then to make it easier for people to buy it, right? And then it's been translated into one language in a printed copy, and then that translation has been again translated from German into Yiddish, which is, I know that Yiddish is a Germanic language, but I don't actually know how close it would have been to German at this time. I think it's more than just writing German in a Hebrew script. And then taking that translation and copying it into a manuscript, because throughout the 16th century, although obviously there are printed books, there's still a culture of manuscript copies, copying by hand. And so that's what's happened here. You have a text that was actually originally printed being translated and then back to into a manuscript, which is sort of interesting. And I just want to point out here that you might notice, well, I'm going to point them so you will. There's these spaces here in the text. These are places where the scribe has left space for a Latin word, probably Latin, to be added, but another word. And they haven't been put in. So in some sense, this is sort of an unfinished. It's a little bit unfinished, right? Because you would expect to see a Latin, and the scribe meant for there to be Latin words here, but they haven't been added. So I'm going to come back and look at, because I see that coming up. So we have questions about close relatives to the Danse Macabre illustrations. Yeah, I think so. I think there would probably be something, maybe there has been work done on that, but I think it is interesting that I wonder if the Danse Macabre, if that interest in that sort of came out of this sort of illustration becoming available. I'm not an art historian, I don't know enough, but that would be interesting to look at. Daniela asks, is the Yiddish manuscript online? Yes, and as Amy says, we don't know the translator, but we do know that it was probably based on this German translation, and I suppose that would be no. So I'm going to come back to this one because we just looked at the first chapter, and so let's take a look at the second chapter, which is ligaments, and again, it's fairly lengthy. Here we go. So here's another illustration with the muscles sort of having been added to that. And again, he's not in a clinical, this isn't in a clinical environment. It's like he's standing up on a hill above a city. And it might be a recognizable city. You've got these sort of two towers, maybe church towers here that it looks like a real place. So I love this sort of taking this specimen and putting it in this weird pastoral environment. I'm sure people have written dissertations about this, but I think it's great. And here's another one showing a little bit of movement. And again, we've got, like ruins in the background. I don't know. So chapter 2, you can see how, how sort of scientific it is. We have everything has been labeled here. And then what's happening here is the labels are all, so they're labeled with numbers and what looks like Greek numbers and letters. And then they're all identified here with a little more of a description along them. So he was being very scientific in a modern way, too. So this is interesting for me because we have in the past, as part of this series, looked at a lot of medical texts from the medieval period, and it's really different. Like, I don't think there's anything in this book about the zodiac. And the zodiac is something that you find in pretty much every medieval medical book that I've looked at has included that. Yeah, and this is all, it's like all about labeling and then describing and labeling and then describing. Let's see. And now we have the longer description. And I think what's going on here is in these marginal notes, I think what that's probably doing is making reference back to the sort of index at the front where they're indexing the parts of the body and then referencing them here. But it's a really pretty, I mean, it's from a book. I'm interested in it. It's a book. I'm going to zoom in here so you can see this woodcut initial. It's a pretty thing. I think you've got, I don't know what is going on there, some kind of, but they're all, it's all anatomy, it's like all kind of naked, a lot of nakedness and a lot of bones, even more of these little initials, which sort of come, these kinds of things come out of the Middle Ages, right? If you think about an illuminated manuscript, you're used to seeing kind of these big initials. Let's see. Nope. Okay. That one had them in front, and now we've got book 3, which is book 3 again, is on the digestive system. So let's see how he does the digestive system. Here we go. That's interesting. So, once you can get into the body and pull out the organs and really start looking at them and figuring them out, you're going to have a much better idea of sort of how it works, the whole digestive process. I think the medieval idea of digestion is not that sophisticated. Not for their faults. Oh, here we go. Here we go. So this is not just digestion. I think this is this the heart and the blood? Oh, that is a lot. But again, you have these labels and the descriptions here. Looks like that's maybe the liver. I don't know, but we've got all the organs and the blood. Oh, this looks like heart to me, but the whole internal system. Let's see if there's lungs. That looks like lungs. So he's just taking lots of things apart and all drawn from life, essentially. So I wonder how many corpses let's see, sorry, there we go. So now we have book 4 on the heart. So I guess that wasn't, here we go. The brain. I feel like I've gotten mixed up, but this says on the heart. But chapter 5 is on the brain. So let's see, sometimes when these older texts are translated, or even when they're copied in different books, the chapters end up getting combined together or sometimes pulled apart. So the list that I'm looking at, I think this is on the brain, but look at that. And this is in 1543 when he wrote this book, when the book was published. 1543. Yeah, so the nervous, looks like this is nervous system. Ooh, I can really see why he made a shortened version, because this is quite a lot. So here we have, I think, digestion together. Let's see. Of these, and let me see. I love there's this chat. Usually I'm sitting right by the computer, and this is a little bit. All right, so I'm gonna read some of this out because I like to have it for the video. John Pollock, thank you, John. I'm glad you're here. On the illustrator question, I've been doing some looking into this. Although the names of these artists have been debated for generations, it is now believed that most or all of the illustrations were prepared by Jan Stephen von Kalkar, who was part of Titian's workshop. Okay, that's really interesting. And then Katie Birkwood says, fun fact about the scenic backgrounds, several of them actually fit together to make a single landscape. We put together a short video illustrating that at the Royal College of Physicians London Museum as part of an exhibition. So I'm going to, if it's okay, Katie, I'm going to put a link to that in our notes when I post this, because that's really interesting. I want to see that. John Pollock says our staff photographer, Chris Lippa, tried this puzzle trick as well when he photographed these full page images for the amazing display at Biotech Commons, which we should all visit. And I might actually go over and take a photo of that and include it on the site when I post this. Yeah, it was I think I mentioned it at the beginning. It was someone from Biotech Commons who requested this to begin with. So that's why we're looking at a printed book today instead, and not just a manuscript. So let's see. Yeah, this is big. It's a lot of work to have such a large book here. They're not usually this big. Ooh. And then we have book 6, which in my list is on the brain. No, on the reproductive. Sorry, book 6 is on the reproductive system. Okay, so there we are. So let's see what we have here. And I don't even know enough about anatomy to know what that is there, but it's the same process where he's numbered everything, and then you go through and label them. And I can just sort of, I'm very human-centered, so I'm sort of imagining him having all of these things out and him labeling them, you know, whatever the 16th century equivalent of Post-it notes are, and then sending them to the artists, because of course he couldn't, it's not like he could take a photograph and send the photo to the artist. So that whole process is just really interesting to me. How they all did that. Ooh, so here's the head. We've got to the head. The skull and the brain and the skull. And oh, that's, and then cutting it apart. Ooh. Wow. This is amazing. I'm amazed that he did this, honestly, that he did all this work and then he was able to write it. And he was able to have artists make these amazing woodcuts. It's like phenomenal. It makes me tired just to think about it. Thank goodness for the press. Oh, this is interesting. I'm not entirely sure what that is, but there we have a pig, I think. Maybe comparing a pig, the pig anatomy to human anatomy. I don't know. See, I haven't been watching time. How are we doing? Oh no. It's like past time. So I'm sorry I kept you going. I just want to take one last look at our little Yiddish manuscript, which is itself very interesting. And it's actually, as far as I know, this text has not been translated or edited. So if you are interested in translating or editing this Yiddish text, that would be amazing. And the images are out there if you want to. So sorry, I went over time without even meaning to. But yes, it was Hannah Rutledge. Sorry, Hannah, I wasn't thinking of your name. Thank you, Hannah, for suggesting this. And thank you, everybody, for coming. And I hope that we'll see you again another time. So have a good week, everybody.